Hey, and welcome back. So in the last video we said that we can also have the nested if statement. Now a nested if has an if within an if. So for example, we have this if, and that's where it starts, and then it ends there. And within this if we have another if in there, and this if also has its else. So if a condition here is true, we'll go in here. Ultimately, if the condition which is here is false, then we'll go all the way just to the else, and we'll ignore everything that is inside here. So else, if the condition which is here is true, then we'll do whatever is here. If the condition is true, we'll do what is in here. If it is false, we'll come all the way here. So this is if it is true, and this is if it is false. So why don't we do an example? And the example we want to do is an if that will help us to check of three numbers, which one is the greatest of them all. Of three numbers that we can put into a function, which number will be the greatest? So to save time and to make sure that the video is short, at least it's going to be a little bit long, but to make sure that it is shorter, I already have the code written out, and what we have is a function that within that function we have if statements, and this if statement will help us to determine which number is the greatest of them all. So if I come here, I have this code. So in this function, first of all, we declare three variables a, b, and c, and then we have our function. So a function is a way for you to group code that you can reuse. So like, let's say you wanted to reuse this code somewhere else. You wanted to check the greatest number in lots of different places, not just in one place. You can use a function to group that code, and then you'll just call that function every time you need it. That's how a function works. So we'll look at functions later on, but right now just bear with me, because the most interesting part for us, the most relevant part for us, is this section with the if and the nested ifs. So here we have three numbers. We have this function, and it's called greatest. We've declared a function, called it greatest, and this function takes three variables. It will take a, b, and c. So the first thing we'll check, if a is greater than b, then let's go into this if. So if a is greater than b, we'll check, is a greater than c? If a is greater than c, that means that a is greater than b and a is greater than c. Therefore, just alert the value of a and then add this. So it will tell us the value of a, and then it will tell us a is the greatest with the value of a there, else alert c is the greatest. So if a is not greater than b, then do this b, check if b is greater than c. So this is the else section here. So inside the else, you can see we also have an if. So if b is greater than c, then alert b is the greatest, right? Because up here we've already checked a greater than b. We've decided that a greater than b is false. Therefore a is smaller than b, and since a is smaller than b and b is greater than c here, therefore b is the greatest. That's just logic, right? A is less than b, right? And here, if this is true, that means b is greater than c. Therefore b is automatically the greatest. So we'll write the value of b there, and then we also say b is the greatest. Else alert c is the greatest. And why do we say that c is the greatest? Because up here we've said a is less than b, right? A is less than b. So we come down here and a is less than b. We've established that, and then we've also established that b greater than c is false, right? So here we'll do an else. That means C is greater than B. C is greater than B. If C is greater than B, if this is false, that means that C is either equal to B or it's greater than it, and that is why this one will say that C is the greatest. Okay, so here we can test that using 3 numbers. So to run this function, you'll just give the function its name, the name of the function, and then you input numbers in there. So this is just an example. You should not let it confuse you. If I come to Scratchpad, just look at the code and try to understand it. Remove that, Control V. So we have, I hope there are not any errors here. Let me see. So you'll have this in the snippets and you can test it and run it and see what happens. So if I run this, it will tell us that 3 is the greatest. So if we say that one is 100, that one is 2, and that one is 343, let's see if it's still going to work. Let me close that, and then I run this. So 100 is the greatest. So the thing here is this. I just wanted to show you that you can nest your if statement. So even here, if you had other things to confirm, you can still do some if in there. The point of this video was that you can do nested ifs. You can go in there, but of course, instead of doing these nested ifs, it's just best to do an else if, right? The compounded else if. It will work better than this if you're using the else if compound. So you do your else ifs, else if, else if, else if. That is more straightforward than this. You can see this is a little bit confusing. So when we are done with this section, the next thing we are going to look at is the switch statement. So you can also see this one also has some loopholes, okay? Like for instance, if I say 2, 2, and 2, and I run this, right? It will tell us 2 is the greatest, right? So it also has its loopholes. So you can just use an else if to cover for everything that you want. For example, in cases like this, you can say they're all equal, you know. So this was just an example. You can play around with this. If you don't understand it, just put it aside and then come back to it some other time. And I'm sure you'll be able to understand it and edit it as much as you want to. And if you try to type it out and something doesn't work for you, just let me know. I'll have a look at it and see what could be missing. So in the next section, in the next bit, let's start looking at the switch statement, which is more so like the compounded else if. So the switch, how it works, you will have a statement here to be checked. Maybe x, you can even say x is equals to 4, and then you have a case whereby case 1, x, case x is equals to maybe 1, you'll do something else. Then another case where x is equals to 2, do something else. So this is very common in C-based programming languages. You'll find the switch in all the C-based programming languages. That is things like PHP, Java, C++, JavaScript. You're going to find this case, and we're going to look at it in detail in upcoming videos. So I will see you then. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, make sure you let me know.